like you to meet Mike Sisco, who says that he feels like an outcast in his own hometown. We welcome you to the show and appreciate you coming back to town to do it, Mike. So, first of all, do you remember, you of course remember the day at the pool. What happened?
I went for a swim. It was very hot, and that's basically it. We went for a swim.
And what happened? Did you notice other people reacting to you?
Not till I got inside the pool, and the lifeguard recognized me, and they kind of ran like people do on those science fiction movies where Godzilla walks into the street or something. They kind of ran. People ran.
And when they started running, did you know that they were running from you or because of you?
Oh, yes.
Well, hello everyone. How y'all doing today? It's Leo again, and I am out running the highways and byways of southern West Virginia and eastern Kentucky, all through hillbilly land, to bring you guys really interesting stories. The one we have today is an important story, and it carries an important message too that resonates these days, and it resonated when it happened as well. So this spot right here, something happened here, something fairly important as a matter of fact. We'll just say it was important enough to bring Oprah Winfrey here twice. You see, back in 1987, the Oprah Winfrey Show visited the small town of Williamson, West Virginia. The town had been thrust into the national spotlight when a young man named Mike Sisco, a local man with AIDS, jumped into the swimming pool. While this would not be news now, it was definitely a lightning rod for anger, bigotry, and quite a bit of fear. You see, back in the day, this is when AIDS first came out, and it was just starting to spread. Not a whole lot of people knew a whole lot about it, and there was a lot of fear. But Mike, unfortunately, he had to deal with a little bit more than most. Like I said, the young man, he was thrust in a national spotlight for getting a disease, basically. You see, there were a lot of people. I'm going to start heading back down now. We've got a couple other sites to get to. There were a lot of people who showed up. This is a little overpass going over the train tracks here to get over to the pool. When I was a little kid, we used to take this all the time. But Mike, like I said, he had to endure just a little bit more than most in his situation. You see, when Oprah came down here and did her show, like I said, the anger and bigotry and fear, it came out for everyone to see.
I feel sorry for any AIDS patient, but as far as saying that he ought to have as much right as me, garbage. I don't believe that.
I believe that he brought it on himself as far as that. And
You think this is a curse from God, him having AIDS?
I don't think it's a curse from God, but God also said that his way of life is an abomination.
His way of life meaning being a homosexual.
Right.
Okay.
I'm repulsed by his disease, and I'm repulsed by him.
Why would you think you would be welcomed here if you had AIDS?
Because I felt I was dying, and I thought they could overlook the fact that I was a homosexual and see that I needed some compassion and to be in my hometown.
I am Mike's sister, Liz, and this town has done every single one of my family wrong. They have shunned us. I have walked in grocery stores, and people have turned around and left because of this. Now, he is one of God's children, no matter if he loves him, if he is his or not. He is God's child. just as we all are.
And so?
And I think that people here need to stop and think, what would you do if it was yours?
There were people on national television who said that it was his fault. They blamed him for getting AIDS. They said it was a punishment from God. They said that God was punishing this young man because he happened to be gay. I knew from first-hand knowledge at the time that that was absurd. See, I had a cousin named Beanie Dotson. Now, Beanie was a real good guy. I liked Beanie. I was a little kid. When I was a teenager, he was in his 20s. He was a little bit older than me, my cousin. Beanie, he was tall, good looking, long blonde hair, blue eyes, all that, whole 9 yards, muscular. Women loved him, women just loved Beanie. And I can remember when I was little thinking, when I grow up, I want to be like Beanie. I can remember that, girls just loved Beanie. And he loved them too. So I knew from first-hand experience. You see, Beanie had contracted AIDS and died too. He died about the same time Mike did. So I knew that all of this punishment from God stuff was a bunch of nonsense. I knew it was a bunch of bigoted comments made by people. I don't know what reason. I don't really know why, but they sure came out of the woodwork. And Oprah, she had her show not far from here at the Field House because, quite frankly, it was too big, for any other venue. The Field House was the only place big enough to hold everyone. Now, the pool, you can see right here, is the grassy area that's filled in now. The pool developed a leak later, and it was going to cost too much to fix it, so they just filled it in. But this is the very pool that Mike jumped into and set off a firestorm. Now, like I said, he did nothing wrong. Mike was just a young man who happened to contract a disease. Now, I didn't know Mike personally, but I did know one of my friends, John Hall, really good friend. He died of aneurysm very suddenly about 10 years ago. Anyhow, John was dating Mike's sister Tara at the time, and I can remember John telling me that Mike was a really good guy, that he really liked him, and I've thought about that over the years. I've thought about Mike, and I've thought about John, and we kind of stumbled across this story not long ago, and yeah, I remember this story. And it's granted, it's still to this day, it's a little bit of a hot button subject, a little bit of a touchy subject to this day, but it's an important story because of the lessons that Mike taught America. He taught the whole country a valuable lesson. You see, Mike, he faced all those slings and arrows. You know what I mean? He faced it bravely, and he faced death bravely. And that is something that is worthy of note. It's worthy of being mentioned. Mike deserves to have his story told. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to head out from here. I'm going to head to the offices for the cemetery where Mike is buried at. And it's a cemetery that we've worked with before. We have a good working relationship with them. We've done a couple stories up there before. So, you know, I know them pretty well. I'm going to go up there real quick, and I know the graveyard he's in, but I don't know the site exactly. So I'm going to go up there and find the site where Mike is actually buried at and tell you guys the rest of the story about how a young man from a little town in Williamson, West Virginia taught the whole country a very valuable lesson. Now this here is Mountain View Memory Gardens main office right here in Williamson. And you know, I've showed you our little town before, and our little church right there, that's the one that has the bells that ring every hour. But I'm going in here to find out some information about where exactly Mike is in their cemetery. And like I said, I've dealt with these folks a couple times. They're really good people, and they take really good care of their cemetery. Most of the cemeteries that we go to, you've seen them in our videos, what they look like. These guys, they do well. They take really good care of their cemetery, their residents. However, I guess whatever the right word would be, I suppose the residents, they're people there. So I'm going to go in and see if I can't find out exactly where Mike is, and we'll head on up and tell you the rest of his story. We found it, sort of. This is the spot where he's at. So I'm going up. They're calling their guys up at the graveyard and told them to watch for a red Mustang, and they're going to show me where the grave is actually at. So we've got the information and headed on out. All we got to do now is go find Mike.
In preparing to come to meet you all here today again, I watched that tape for the first time since 1987 all the way through. And I was struck by how brave he was to sit in a room where there was such vitriol, such venom and hatred toward him. Did he regret doing that show afterwards, or did he feel some sense of validation after doing that show afterwards?
He always said that he was glad he did that show, that he just wanted to educate people. You know, it was never anything other than just get some education out there.
Did he leave town after that show?
Yes, he did. He moved to Charleston and then proceeded on to move to California.
Did he ever find the kind of peace and compassion that he was looking for? Did he ever?
He did, with his immediate family, his dad, his sisters. He did.
Did he have a peaceful death?
Yes, he did. I was there that night. Tina met me at the door, and she said he hasn't spoken all day today. And I said, well, and so I walked in his room, and he opened his arms up, and he said, where have you been? And I went over and hugged him, and then that night, you know, Tina and her family left, and I sat with him we had us a little bed fixed beside his bed, and while my husband and son slept in another bedroom and my dad slept, he passed away.
He passed away.
Yeah.
When Mike passed, I heard that some of your relatives had a problem, actually, with where you wanted to bury him. And during that show, there was a moment where we mentioned the fact that relatives didn't want him to be buried, and I asked the question, what are they afraid that AIDS is going to seep through the ground through the casket? And I think everybody sort of chuckled. Was that the fear, or was it?
I think so. Someone in the family called our dad and said, we're not going to let you bury him beside his mother.
I actually think a lot of the reason as well that they didn't want him buried there is he was gay, and
they thought it was a disgrace to the
yes.
grave site and the memory of
our family,
your mother.
But I'm sure that played a bigger part than what anybody would ever admit to.
So your mother's casket was removed
Yes,
from the ground, taken to another cemetery.
A beautiful cemetery that's taken care of. they're all three there together now. Our dad passed away about 3 years after Mike. And they're all three together, right where he wanted to be. He loved his mother. My mother loved him. And they're in a beautiful, it's beautiful.
But your mother's casket had to be removed from the ground and taken to another cemetery.
Absolutely.
In order to keep peace in the family.
In order for them to be together.
Like I said, we had some trouble finding him. He went by Mike Sisco, but his real name was Robert Michael Sisco II. So he was buried under Robert M. Sisco instead of Mike. To be honest, I got lucky. One of the ladies that works in the offices at the at the graveyard's main offices is a friend of Robert's sister. So she made a couple phone calls and found out some information for us, found out what name he was buried under. And once we had that, it was just a simple matter of looking up the spot up here and, of course, actually coming out here. But when I got here, there were a couple employees standing right there. And as soon as I pulled up, they asked if I was looking for Mike. I said, yeah, I am. And we found him for you. He's right over here. And they showed me where he was at. Now I'm going to sit down beside his grave here just for a second. And, kind of just chill for a second. A little more information, like I said, tell you the rest of the story. Now, like I said, Mike, he preferred to go by Mike, so we'll go by Mike. And he faced all of this stuff, the stigma. I mean, it's like COVID. You contract some deadly disease, whether it be COVID, cancer, whatever the case may be. Those diseases don't really carry the stigma that AIDS did. And those of you who are old enough to remember when AIDS first came out, you know what I'm talking about. You remember it. 23 years after Oprah's first visit in 2010, some of the citizens who spoke out against Mike returned to the Williamson field house where the original show was filmed to reflect on whether their opinions had changed with time. In 1987, Mike's sister, Tina, was so worried about how speaking out in support of her brother on television would affect her son that she went by the name of Liz on the show and wore a wig to hide her identity. Today, in 2010, Tina, this is an article obviously, Tina was joined by Mike's other sisters, Anna and Leah, to discuss their late brother's life. Tina says Mike moved away from Williamson after the show, first to Charleston, West Virginia, and then later to California. Leah says Mike's death was a peaceful one. I was there that night. Tina met me at the door, she said. He hasn't spoken all day. I walked into his room. He opened up his arms and he said, "Where have you been?" I went over and hugged him, she says. That night I went and sat with him, and we had a little bed fixed beside his bed. And while my husband and son slept in another bedroom and my dad slept, he passed away. All three sisters say the trip to the pool that sparked the controversy was not intended as a political statement. It was just an escape from a stiflingly hot summer day. It never crossed my mind to not go, Tina says. We went to the pool every single day. Now this is 2024, and it's been 2 decades since this was even thought about. But like I said earlier, Mike's death taught the whole country a very valuable lesson. It taught them to look a little bit deeper. You know, to look beyond something as simple, as someone's sexual preference, and see the person for who they are. If you know what I mean, right? You follow me, right? That is the lesson that this country learned from Mike. To look at people and see them for what they are, not what you imagine them to be. I remember when this happened, when Oprah was down here, they had, reporters, I guess, whatever, I'm not sure what they call them, just people wandering around town, asking locals for their opinion about Mike, about Mike getting in the pool. And I can remember that mine made the cutting room floor. My comment didn't make it. It made the cutting room floor. I can remember I threw a Bible verse at him. I said, the Bible says you should treat others as you would have them treat you. But that's not really how the world works, is it? You treat others as they treat you. If they're good to you, you're good to them. If they're bad to you, you just don't associate with them anymore. Here we have a person, a young man, who did absolutely nothing wrong. The only thing you could even remotely consider that he did wrong was to get sick. That is a shame that this young man went through all of that stuff because he got sick.
Because what else had you experienced in town before the swimming pool incident?
Just a lot of gossip, really. A lot of people that are afraid.
Anyway, rest in peace, Mike. And you guys say a little prayer for him. And this is Leo with the Hillbilly Files. And we'll see you guys next time. Leo out.